morning.
Oh, yeah.
I have the honor of introducing former Governor Marty Schreiber. My name's Joe Sayers. We went to high school together, and S-A-Y-R-S is right before S-C-H-R-E-I-D-E-R. And so we sat together for 4 years. Hey, that wasn't exactly painful. He's a really nice guy. I also know Elaine Schreiber, which used to like him. He's going to talk about his relationship with her. Governor?
Well, good morning. Thank you very, very much. This has really been sort of like old home week for me. My classmate Joe Sayers, and he came up to me and he said, "I've been dragooned into introducing you." I thought if you wouldn't have failed public relations, you would have come up to me and said it would be my honor to let you graduate anyway. Darla Hume, a longtime friend, is here. Senator Dave Berger is here. Marion Hines is here, and even Dave is here, but I don't know if we've met before. All right. Well, anyway, good morning to you, and such a great honor to be here with such great friends. Now, I'm looking for the person who came up to me and said, "Didn't you used to be Martin Schreiber?" And then I'm also looking for the person who came up to me and said, "I voted for you," and I said, "Oh, you're the one." And so, well, let me tell you a little bit about My Two Elaines. Well, first of all, I'll get into some of the. First of all, the book sells for $16.95 manufactured suggested retail price, but here I would sell it for $15, which would include sales tax, if you don't tell Governor Walker. Any profits from the sale of this book go to support Alzheimer's caregiver groups, and so this is a very special mission of love for me. About maybe 3 months before I'm ready to go to press to tell my side of the story, I run across a series of notes and journals and diaries all over the place that Elaine had written since she was first diagnosed, going back some 14 years ago when she was 65 years old. And when we had received the diagnosis and that time following, we had prayed together and we had cried together, but never until I read her notes did I understand the courage that it takes to be diagnosed with this disease and continue forward. I thought I understood the anxiety, I thought I understood the worry, thought I understood all of that, but I really didn't get a real good feeling until I read those notes. And so my daughters, Kathy and Christine, and I went through these notes, and we were able then to put some of them in the book. And so then in the book, then you'll get some of the pictures of Elaine, and maybe I'll read a few of those notes. But then also, in the course of the book, we gave a number of presentations, and I had to come out, by the grace of God, with a third printing, second edition. And the difference between the first two printings and the third printing is the fact that we've updated some statistics, but what we have also done is added what I call conversations from the road. So I've given approximately over 100 some talks, and we have questions and answer periods, and what I tried to reflect in the conversations from the road are the most expressed concerns. And you're going to find in here then also not only then Elaine's feelings and my feelings, but also I ask each of my 4 children what their thoughts were. And what happened was, I said, I wrote my book, but I didn't ask Elaine until I found her notes. But I also didn't ask my children what they were going through. And so you'll have just a few thoughts from them. I also want to mention that if you like the book, some people say that it resonates, and you can go to Amazon and give it 800 million stars and stripes and so forth. That would be really good. Because if it helps people and they think they want to buy it, then maybe we can help more people. I also want to tell you that there are people who have picked up this book and they started to read it and they couldn't put it down. And you see how shiny this is? See, that's a varnish like that they put on there. And what happened was I pushed the printer so hard to get it done on time, I had a timeline, that he didn't let the varnish dry on front here. And so people picked up the book and they started to read it and they couldn't put it down. And so what happened further is, you know how cold it was, how bitterly cold it was? Well, people tried to put their coat on and they couldn't get the book in their arm at the same time. And so they had to carry their hand outside of their coat. They claim I am responsible for 39 cases of frostbite to fingers. And it's not really my fault, but anyway, that's some of the things that you should know about. Is Brad Eiding still here? Brad is the son of Al Eiding, who was a very good friend of mine from law school. But anyway, Brad was kind enough to help me get my books in and so forth. But anyway, so my first experience with Alzheimer's, with dementia, was when I was running for governor back in 1978, and I gave a talk in Eau Claire, Wisconsin, a campaign speech. I'm done with the campaign speech, and a man rushes over to me, and he's elderly. You could tell he was old. And he looked at me, he says, "Governor," he said, "that had to be the world's most god-awful speech I ever heard in my whole life." Well, his wife heard this, and so she came over quickly because she was embarrassed. She said, "Oh, Governor," she says, please excuse my husband. He's old and he's senile, and all he does is repeat whatever he hears everybody else say." So My Two Elaines, the first Elaine is the girl that I met when I was a freshman in high school at Lutheran High in Latin class. And I knew right away when I saw her that that was the girl I wanted to marry. And so we dated, we went steady, we got engaged, we got married, 4 children, 13 grandchildren, now 5 great-grandchildren. My friend, my companion, everything that you could ever hope for. If I run for office, she was the best campaign worker any person could have, and when I would lose, she would never let me feel defeated. Well, the second Elaine is the woman who was diagnosed with Alzheimer's, going back again, as I said, some 14 years ago. And in the course of that journey, Elaine is at the Lutheran home now in assisted living, and thank goodness for Marion and people like her who serve on the board and keep that Lutheran home strong. But excellent, just excellent, outstanding care. But anyway, the second Elaine, then, as we journeyed through this, and I began to look back, I realized that there were some things that I didn't learn soon enough. There were some things that I learned too late. And I also got to the point where I concluded that if Alzheimer's is bad, ignorance of the disease is worse. And then I went one step further, and I had read a quotation which said, "Rather than worrying about the storm to pass, to try and learn how to dance in the rain." And so I looked at that and I said, I have got to do something, hopefully for other people who are going to be following me on this journey. Because again, there were things that I didn't learn soon enough. And so if Alzheimer's is bad, ignorance of the disease is worse, by whom? Well, by caregivers, by their family, but by the medical profession who has to understand if there is a diagnosis of Alzheimer's, there are 2 patients, the caregiver as well, because a caregiver for Alzheimer's has a better chance of becoming ill, dying sooner, having their savings dissipated, having their retirement impacted, and also their jobs affected. And because of that, then I felt I had to do something. Therefore, I wrote the book. And I wrote the book with a woman by the name of Kathy Breitenbutcher, who has the day off this morning, otherwise she would be here. But she, a great writer, and she wrote a book about Bonnie Blair, but maybe 5 years ago she interviewed me and Elaine for an M magazine story, and I thought, wow, that was very special. Now, she's much more, she's younger and more fastidious than I am, and more serious, of course. And you know, they say we older people have taken our irritable disgusting traits and turned them into now lovable characteristic. And she has a very difficult time making that transition with me. But she's just a great writer. So anyway, so here's what I ended up writing the book with her. And as I said, ignorance of the disease by employers as well. And it's not a chicken casserole disease. You know, if I have a heart attack and I'm laid up at home, many times people would bring me chicken, well, I mean, you know, you would bring chicken casserole, or if I break my hip, chicken casserole and so forth. But with Alzheimer's, people tend to shy away because they don't understand the disease. I didn't understand the disease enough to share with my brother and family what was really going on, and that made the journey even that much tougher. So what I began to understand is how I could have made Elaine's life happier, better, to steal from this disease, which is so dreaded in and of itself, but to steal from this disease some moments of joy. And so once Elaine asked me, how are my parents? I said, Elaine, I says, your parents are both dead. Well, the shock on her face when she realized that maybe she didn't say goodbye, maybe she didn't even go to the funeral. And I promised myself I would never put her through that again. And so now when she asked me, how are my parents? I said, oh, Elaine, I said, your parents, your mom likes working at church, your dad loves the sports, they're really doing well. Oh, she said, that makes me feel so happy. Well, that's therapeutic fibbing. If I would have thought about therapeutic fibbing 57 years ago when I first got married. Or when I ran for office back in 1978. Or 1982. But the point of the matter is that there are some of the things that we can and must do. Another thing I learned is I've had to eliminate, and I'm sure I've eliminated the word no right from the start. The word no. No one likes to hear the word no, no matter how good you and I are feeling. But the fact of the matter is you take someone who is looking down the future, being diagnosed with Alzheimer's, or even is the stage where they are now in their own world. What happens is, and so if Elaine wants a glass of wine at 9:30 in the morning, and I don't say no, Elaine, you can't have a glass of wine, it's 9:30 in the morning, what are you talking about? I say, would you like red wine or white wine? Do you want it in a taller glass or do you want it in a smaller glass? Do you want to drink it with your sister or do you want to drink it with the friends? And by that time, we're redirected. She wants to go skydiving. That's the dumbest idea. No, it's not the dumb. We're going to put that in our bucket list. That's a great idea. To look for every opportunity to be positive because they need that assurance so badly. Now, I want to tell you what I think happens in the life of a person as this Alzheimer's progresses. If you can take a funnel, for example, and envision with me putting a small part of the funnel by your eye, and then you look up, and what happens is you can see, because the funnel gets larger, you can see the blueness of the sky and the hope of tomorrow. But what happens as this disease progresses, that funnel becomes inverted. And now all they see is a smaller part. That is their world. Their world is not 5 minutes from now, or 5 minutes ago, or maybe even 50 years ago. Their world is that which is right in front of them. If I understand that, I can steal more moments of joy from this disease. So for example, as I understand Elaine's world, so we're sitting and we're having lunch at the Lutheran home, and she starts to cry. I said, Elaine, why are you crying? Oh, well, she said, I'm beginning to love you more than my husband. I didn't ask her, what's wrong with your turkey husband? But the fact of the matter is, I was in her world. And that is what is so important. Now, there's a story about a hippopotamus and a butterfly that fell in love with one another. And they're about to be married. And the hippopotamus is beginning to think about the consummation of the marriage. And that's a very difficult thing, and so concludes the hip. So he seeks out the wise owl. He says, wise owl, I am a hippopotamus, and I'm about to marry to this butterfly. I'm concerned about the consummation of the marriage. What should I do? Well, says the owl, is turn yourself into a butterfly. Well, the hippopotamus accepted that advice and then began to walk, and then how do I do that? So it goes, wise owl, how do I turn myself into a butterfly? And the wise owl says, get lost. I just determined policy. Now, what I'm telling all of you now is policy. And what I'm telling you as caregivers, as policy, something which is very, very difficult, but extremely important. And the policy is, in order for me to be a good caregiver and steal these moments of joy from Alzheimer's, what I have to do is let go of the first Elaine. I certainly can have her memories, but no longer can I expect those things that we once had together. I can no longer expect her to remember my name. I can no longer expect her to know who the children are or the grandchildren are. But that's okay, because this is a different person. And many times people ask me, well, doesn't it hurt you when Elaine doesn't know who you are? Well, the fact of the matter is, yes, it did once, but because I now understand and am in the world of the second Elaine, she doesn't have to know who I am. And she doesn't have to know who the children are. She doesn't have to know where she lives. All she has to know is that she is in a secure, safe place, and that she is loved. And that is one of the things that I am so fortunate with, and that is that we can be together and we can sing. We go for rides and we listen to XM radio, songs of the 50s, and we're singing, and Elvis Presley is singing. I've got a woman at the other end of town, and she's really good for me. Elaine looked at me and said, don't you wish? And so Alzheimer's is the top, among the top 10 killers. It's number 6. Of the top 10 killers, it's the only disease that cannot be prevented, delayed, or cured. And so it's pretty serious business. But I want you to know that in Elaine's situation, they actually think that she's getting better. And that it could be something that could be some kind of miraculous something. But anyway, so I'll tell you how this comes about. As I said, Elaine and I had lunch at the Lutheran home, and over here at this table is a doctor and a nurse, and they're sitting there. And Elaine is talking to me, and she's telling me how intelligent and good looking I am. What is your social security number? So anyway, so they hear her tell me how intelligent and good looking. They say Elaine must be getting better. So they write an article for the New England Medical Journal, and they send it in all the way over to, and the editor looks at it, and he writes back. He says, I want you to know, he says, you're on the right path. You have 2 examples how Elaine is getting better, but you need a 3rd. Then we can go with the story. Oh, now a little bit of time went by. Elaine and I, we happen to be sitting at the same lunch table eating, and we happen to be having the same doctor and nurse sitting right nearby. And so what happens many times, Elaine asks me, she says, how did we ever get together? And I said, well, I said, when we were 14 years of age, I saw you was just so beautiful, I wanted you for my wife. And I said, if any boy got within 50 feet of you, I popped him on the head. She says, you're a bullshitter. Well, now they had the 3 things. And so if you go to the New England Medical Journal, probably the June edition, you're going to be able to see how Elaine Schreiber is getting better. And you know, joining their world and trying to give reassurance, many times she says, do I love her? I says, yes, I love you. And then she says, well, how long will you love me? Well, I want to make her mind at ease, so I said, Elaine, I will love you forever and ever and a billion years. Well, then she looked sad. I says, why are you sad? She says, I don't think I could take you that long. and so you understand that anything and everything can happen, and the more you can join their world, the easier and the better it's going to be. And so what I want to share with you is that sometimes this disease, probably all of the time, takes you a place where you never thought you would go. Did I ever think I would be here with you this morning? What is it, March 17th? And with all my 18th? You could have just let it pass. The two of you are the biggest troublemakers I run into. Where's Pastor? I gotta report you.
They already know.
They already know, huh? Now where I was, I forgot where I am. Oh, it's a pleasure to be here with you in Chicago, Illinois. No, where were we? Oh, it takes you places where you didn't want, yeah, that I would be here on May. This Dave is all right. But anyway, I didn't, when I was elected to the state senate way back in 1962. And one of my responsibilities at a moment in time was to go to Washington, D.C. for a meeting. And if you would take a 5:30 airplane out of Milwaukee in the morning, you could get to Washington, you could conduct your meeting, and you would get home in the same day. So now it's like 5 o'clock in the morning, and they're boarding the airplane. Getting on the airplane in front of me is a very distinguished looking gentleman. You could tell he had to be somebody important because of the expense of his suit and his tie and his attaché case. And as he gets on the airplane, he said to the flight attendant, the stewardess at that time, now flight attendant, says, "This airplane stop in Detroit?" "Oh yes," said the flight attendant. We take from Milwaukee to Detroit. We land, people get off the plane, people get on the plane, we go on to Washington, D.C. He says, "Okay," he says, "please, I've got to get off the plane in Detroit. Will you help me?" Well, she says, "Of course I will." Now he said, "Look," he says, "I'm inclined to fall asleep on an airplane. It's in the morning, and if I fall asleep, I may miss getting, will you help?" She said, "I will get you off there." He said, I want you to know that this is very," she said, "Sir," she said, "don't worry." Well, now we land in Washington, D.C. And here this gentleman is getting off of the airplane. Oh, as he gets off of the airplane, he berates the flight attendant. He actually takes a swing at her. And so I saw this whole thing from Milwaukee, so I walked up to the flight attendant. I said, "My goodness," I said, "that man is angry." And she said, "He's angry. You should have seen the fellow I put off in Detroit." So what I'm saying is this disease takes us where we never thought we would go. And I mention this story to drive home the point that sometimes we caregivers think that our friends and loved ones desert us. Now, I mentioned that it's not a chicken casserole disease. I mentioned that if Alzheimer's is bad, ignorance of the disease is worse. Well, what happens is that, let's assume that you have a circle of friends, and that circle of friends were very much involved, let's just say, canoeing and going and art, art shows and so forth. But that's what drew you together. Now all of a sudden there's a diagnosis of Alzheimer's, and my game no longer is art and canoeing. My game is now Alzheimer's. What happens, I said, in the life of a person who has Alzheimer's remember the funnel? The same thing happens in the life of a caregiver. Because they devote all of their time and attention and emotion, and they go through the grieving and the depression, what happens is their world becomes so much smaller. And so if I continue to hang on to art and canoeing, that's not so good for me. And so it's almost as if the fact that our interests have changed is good, because it kicks me out of the nest to seek help from the Alzheimer's Association, to seek help from caregiver support groups, to seek help from friends who I could bare my soul to and who could come in and give assistance. And so that feeling of sometimes being deserted is a very difficult one to live through, but it's a very important one to understand that it's going to take you in places that are maybe better off than you were before. And so what we want to do, I'm going to make a few, I'm going to just say a few more things. We're going to have a question and answer session, but before that I'll just read a few notes from the book. But when we have the question and answer session, we will handle it like, if you ask a question, I will repeat the question so everyone hears it. If you ask me a question that I do not know the answer to, I will rephrase the question so that there will be no question you can ask me that I will not be able to know the answer. I want you also to know in all of this how important prayer and patience and persistence. Very important. to give you an example of that, and I know that this is a Lutheran church, and I'm born and reared Missouri Synod Lutheran, and Elaine is at the Lutheran home and so forth. By the way, I want you to know, well, I'm going to talk about one other thing, and then I'm going to tell you something. I'm going to talk about the first thing first, then the second thing second. Anyway, May 18th, right? All right, but here is another aspect of this, this disease. And that is, and we notice this in the conversations from the road, and that is the amount of guilt that caregivers feel. And they just drag it with them, and 3, 4, 5 years, even after their loved one has passed, or just as they start. Or I'm walking down the hall at the Lutheran home, and a woman, she says, I'm a nurse, and my husband, and I still don't feel I've been doing enough. Well, here's what I think happens. I think what happens is that you think you're the only one that loses your temper. And I tell you, the constant questions that you get, repeated. You go for a walk and you sit and you come back and you sit down 5 minutes. Let's go for a walk, because you don't remember the first walk. And then you come back, let's go for a walk. But anyway, so you feel guilty because you can't handle it. But then also because this disease is so regressive. You give all of your heart, you give all of your soul, your time, everything that you think can help. You wake up the next morning and you're 5 paces back. And so then you say, well, maybe I'm not doing it right. And so that guilt keeps on mounting. And so you have heard of Martin Luther, right? And you've heard of Martin Schreiber. Pastor, please understand, I'm going to go above and beyond my religious authority. But if you know Martin Luther and you know the first names are the same, right? Therapeutic fibbing is okay, and get rid of the guilt. And if you can understand that getting rid of the guilt, it can have such a big difference in having your life be a better life, and also in helping you dance in the rain. Now, getting back to prayer and patience and persistence. And this woman had a parrot, and this parrot all the time would say, Polly wants to party, Polly wants to party, Polly wants to party. Well, she was going to be entertaining some very important people, and she was afraid that if the important people would come and the only thing that they would hear the parrot say is Polly wants to party, that she would be embarrassed and people would think less of her. So she didn't know what to do, so she seeks out, well, she goes to her church, she goes to her pastor. And she says, Pastor, you have to help me here, because I've got Polly wants to party, these friends are coming over. The pastor says, this is unbelievable. He says, I myself have 2 parrots, Peter Parrot and Paul Parrot. And I've had them for 7 years, and all they do is pray. They've been praying from the moment I got them, 7 days a week, every month, every year. They've been praying. He says, what we should do is put your parrot in with my parrots, and my parrots will be a good influence on your parrot. So they agreed. The lady goes home and gets her parrot. They bring it over to the pastor's home. They open up the cage. They put the lady's parrot in. Sure enough, Polly wants to party. Polly wants to party. Peter Parrot looked at Paul Parrot and says, our prayers have finally been answered. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to do just a few readings from Elaine's notes, and then we'll open it up for hopefully some questions and answers. And what I've done is, rather than have you watch me fumble through the book, I did make photocopies just exactly as from the book, so I could make it easier. This is from March 11th of 2009. And she writes, it wasn't until a few weeks ago that I really had to say, yes, I do have Alzheimer's. I had read of signs that indicate Alzheimer's, like getting overly upset for no reason and having trouble with names and directions. But I still didn't think it was a problem for me. But in hindsight, for too long, I've been getting lost driving, having trouble keeping days straight, and difficulties with names and schedules. I still felt I could handle it. It won't get worse. but this morning I started reading about the mid-stage of Alzheimer's in hopes of preparing myself better and realized I'm not very far away. That is most scary, but I have to accept it. Now, there are some, as I said, we went through these diaries. There are many moments where she speaks very highly of me, and I put some of these in here not for self-aggrandizement, but one of the things that caregivers many times don't do is take care of themselves. And they don't realize how important their health is in helping their loved one on this journey. And if we get on that airplane, what do they say? They say, put on your own oxygen mask first. And so I'm going to read you two selections in which she talks about me to give you a sense that, well, I'll just read this here. She writes, "My Marty, who is and always has been my strength and comfort. I thank God every day for his understanding, loving ways, his patience, good humor, hard work. He made possible not only 4 wonderful children and a wonderful, exciting, and busy life for me, but also helped many others through his lifetime. He has a true gift for making those around him feel good about themselves, laugh at his jokes, and grow into stronger people. I thank you for that, hon, as I've benefited the most." Now, I want to read you another one. "I am not enjoying my role anymore as Marty's wife. Because of his having concerns about my Alzheimer's, he doesn't let me be me. He doesn't let me go for a walk if I want to, or to the store. I used to appreciate him when I thought was concerned, but he holds me captive. I am going to try to have a second opinion because I really don't think I have any problem. I know how to drive or walk any place. He doesn't believe me. I hate the control he has placed on me." And so what happens is this disease progresses. There's in and out times, flashing in and out. And sometimes people ask me, well, do I try and convince my loved ones they have or don't have this disease? I say, no, you don't try and convince anything. You join their world where they're at. If Elaine felt good, we felt good. If she thought that she was experiencing a loss of memory and so forth, well, I would work with her and I would understand that. She once asked me, how old am I? And I said, well, Elaine, how old do you want to be? And just, trying to avoid any kind of opportunity for them to have this comfort. This is dated July 3rd, 2012. This is my favorite one. And then we'll open it up for questions if you wish. But she writes, "Life is good. And I plan to have it continue that way until my children tell me it's time for a nursing or something like that. This is realistic with what my Alzheimer's book says about my future. But till then, I will try my best to be normal, whatever that means, and keep my happy side of life always continuing. I'm lucky to have such a good family and many friends to help get me through all this. And so another great day to thank the Lord. And smile, smile, smile." So that's some of Elaine's writings, and I am very pleased to be here. Sue, thank you very much for the invitation, and many times people invite me because they've been program chairman too long, and they figure if they invite me and I start talking, people will fire them as program chairman, and so and I'm very popular in those circles. Yes. Questions? Yes.
Did you have any genetic marker?
Is there any genetic marker? Did I have one? The answer to that is no. Okay? And I want to tell you, in the book is the Alzheimer's 800 number, and you can go to alz.org. Very important. The Alzheimer's 800 number is 24/7. Anytime you have a question, you should give them a call. I know what I have lived, and I know what I have read, but I am not an expert. I am not concerned about the genetic impact of Alzheimer's, except for a very, very rare strain in which they have shown that it is genetic. Now, if you read the book, you're going to see where my daughter Christine is concerned. And I will tell you and everyone here what I told her, and that is that there is no proof to the genetic strain of Alzheimer's being handed down other than this very, very rare disease. Also, your best chance of getting Alzheimer's is to live a long time. And by living a long time, it seems that is the most significant impact on the cause of Alzheimer's. Yes, Joe?
Marty, can you talk a little bit about yourself, about the way it affected you, and what you did to get out of that?
The question is, how could I possibly have lost the election for governor?
You look much better, Marty. Marty, you look much better.
I look much better.
Talk about that.
Yeah, well, I did go to the doctor the other day, and he said I am coming along better. He took my blood pressure, and that was pretty good, and he took my heartbeat, that was pretty good. He put that thing on the oxygen, 96% oxygen, but he said I'm too fat. So I said, I want another opinion. He said, well, you have a really crummy haircut too. Plus your shoes need to be shined. Anyway, Joe's question was, what kind of impact did it have on me? I'm going to tell you among the things that I learned. I learned I should have asked for help much sooner. I learned that my arrogance in not wanting to have Elaine go into assisted living was one, I didn't want to part with her. I didn't want to admit defeat. But my male ego was really a significant cause of me not wanting to admit the fact that Elaine is better off where she is now. So I should have asked for help sooner, and what happened was my health was affected to a significant degree. And in that process of caring for Elaine, I learned that all of the Army's marching, and all of the Navy sailing, and all of the beer that's brewed, and all of the whiskey that's distilled is not going to stop this disease. And I call it the caregiver's poison. And as I began to learn more of that, it was helpful. My daughter Christine gave me an article on the benefits of moderate drinking, and it wasn't because I was not drinking enough. And so, that's one of the reasons that I wanted to write the book, so people would understand that they've got to get help, and that they have to understand this disease so that they can feel these moments of joy. But for a while, it was a very miserable life, and my heart goes out to any caregiver, and a caregiver is a hero. As I said, sometimes because of the guilt and the bereavement and the depression, all of those things coming together, and then the thought of being forsaken by your friends and so on. Now, I didn't have all of those, but here, I'm a pretty lucky guy. I have a business where my partners could take over. I had nursing home insurance. I was financially secure, and so forth. But my heart goes out to anyone who has to deal with the job, has to deal with finances, has to deal with trying to better understand this disease, and all of those things that go along with it. So I had it easy. I had it easy. So, thanks. Yes?
How have your children dealt with your wife and the progression of her disease?
All right, that's a very good question. How have my children dealt with it? First of all, each one of the 4 children has written a small paragraph in the epilogue and the conversations from the road. But I went to counseling. I have been going to counseling. They helped pull me through this, the Alzheimer's Association. And I drive home the importance of caregivers needing that additional support. But anyway, I'm visiting with the counselor, and the question is, how come, and we get this a lot in conversations from the road, how come the children don't do this or that? How come brothers or sisters of the ill person don't do this or that, and so forth? And so I'm talking this over with Linda Market, my counselor, and here is what basically the answer is, and that is that everyone handles this disease a different way. And as I said, when I'm going through this with Elaine as the caregiver, I never stopped to ask my children how they're doing, and never stopped to ask, how their feelings are, which I didn't do until this part of the book. Now, the counselor went on one step further, and I am going to tell myself more directly and candidly than she told me. And basically, I have no right to tell anyone how to handle this disease. And so if a brother or a sister of Elaine or children or friends handle it their way, that is up to them. I only have so much energy, I have only so much time, and if I use my time and energy wisely, I will be thinking about what can I personally do to help make things better for Elaine and anyone else, and leave whatever process people are using to handle this disease, that's okay by me, that they've got to use that process. So that's a long answer to your question, how do the children handle? Each of them handles it a little bit differently. One of my sons comes almost every day and helps feed Elaine. Another son is up in Stevens Point and comes when he can. I have a daughter, one on West and one on East Coast, and they also come when they can. Yes?
Is that the same genetic marker that causes Down syndrome?
Is that the same genetic marker that causes Down syndrome? I do not know.
Because my dad had Alzheimer's, passed away, had about 3 or 4 years, passed away at 83. His oldest grandchild, a daughter, got early Alzheimer's at the age of 50, and our youngest grandson got Down syndrome. And I had heard someplace that it goes together.
Right. I do not know. You may try that 800 number or Google it, I don't know. But I do not know the answer to that.
Thank you.
Yes?
What causes a person who gets Alzheimer's to die? What causes them to die?
Okay, that's a very good question. The question is, what causes a person with Alzheimer's to die? It's not the Alzheimer's directly, but it's the brain beginning to shut down various functions of the body. Now, it could shut down a kidney, it could shut down another organ. In Elaine's situation, her mind is not able to connect with her feet. And so if she wants to walk, no matter, she can't get the legs to move because there's no communication there and so forth. And so, but it's a gradual process. I was talking with Darla and I was mentioning the fact that you know what's going to happen as a caregiver because you understand the regression of the disease, and it's sort of like knowing if you go outside in the rain you're going to get wet, but you still don't like it. But you just try and do what you then can to help the person on their journey. And when I say do what you can, you as a caregiver or when you go visit someone, play a detective, play like you're a detective and find out what they really like. So Elaine is just really more into listening to music, church music and so forth, and by gosh, that's a wonderful thing. For a while, in more of the early stages, it was folding towels, and so she liked to feel busy and that she was worthwhile, so she would fold towels, and I would take the pile, go into the other room, rustle them up again, bring them back, and Elaine would fold them all over again. But the point of the matter is their self-identity, their self-valuation becomes so important, and everything that I could do is, again, rather than worrying about the storm to pass to try and learn how to dance in the rain, there were things that I learned too late or not soon enough, but once I learned that, I could help her self-identification. That proved to be very important for me as well as for her. Yes?
Have you heard anything specifically about music with regards to Alzheimer's and its potential positive effects?
May 18th, Dave, no, March 18th, Dave.
We love the March 17th party.
Yeah. Asked about the importance of music. Well, music is almost the universal language, and there is no question but that music is important most of the time to Alzheimer's patients, and even to everybody who is ill. But at the Lutheran home, they have live musicians come in, and oh gosh, that's the high point. And but whether it's Elvis music, or whether it's piano playing, or guitar playing, or religious music, or so whatever, you know, music is very important. So,
Yeah, there is a program called Music in Memory that there's some state funding for and
Mhm.
other private money for, and they build a playlist specifically for each person on an iPad. I think,
Oh, okay.
And you can keep it in.
did everyone hear that? Okay,
So a program's called Music in Memory.
a program called Music in Memory, and you get it where?
Look it up on the web, they've got a site.
Look it up, music,
And through a lot of public library systems.
okay.
They will set you up, and then each person gets their own playlist on their own device that matches their Elvis or whatever it is that they like.
So you can go to the Milwaukee Public Library and they will make up a playlist to the liking of the person who is sick.
They do, they don't have it at Milwaukee Public yet.
Oh, they don't have Milwaukee Public yet? Oh, let's get on them, huh? Yeah. Does Wauwatosa have it, do you know?
I'm not sure about that.
Okay, all right. Yes?
Since I am a friend of yours and you're the caregiver, what's the best way for me to work with you? Take you out to lunch or breakfast, or what's the best?
Great question. The question is, if you have a friend who's a caregiver, how best can you help them? I think number one is to acknowledge what they're going through. You know, for you to say, wow, and just even that, it's just, you know, that someone understands and so forth. Then, as you would play detective for the person who is ill to find out what their likes are, your friend, if your friend likes to go to Costco and go through the aisles and so forth, well, maybe you could take care of the person he is caring for so he could go out to go to Costco. If he likes to go out for breakfast or lunch, and you can arrange that so you can just sit and listen and talk, or not even talk about the illness, about anything else, but again, the acknowledgement and support are key things. And also you can go to the Alzheimer's 800 and ask them. They have some more in detail, but basically acknowledgement and also support and giving them some respite in whatever areas they think are important. I enjoy playing cribbage, and if anybody wants to invite me for cribbage, I intentionally lose so I look good, that's okay. Yes, here?
You mentioned that you thought you probably waited too long to move Elaine from your home to assisted living. What advice might you have for other people who are in a situation considering, is it time or not? What things would you consider?
Another good question. The question is, well, how do you determine the appropriate time for your loved one to get help as to who she is now? I think I told you that I was with the counselor and the question was about putting Elaine into a home. And I said, I can't see putting Elaine into a home. And the counselor says, you're not putting her anyplace. You are giving her an opportunity to be who she is now. And so that's one question. And we talk about this in the book also, and that is considered, and not a whole lot of discussion, but in summary, like a balance scale. And on one side of the balance scale is the caregiver's health. On the other side is the health of the person who is ill. And when that begins to come out of whack, that's when it's time for assisted living. There is no way that Marty Schreiber's 24/7 nursing home could ever give Elaine the help of who she is now. I was becoming more irritable, my health was suffering, and if I really loved Elaine, I should have been, well, I really did love Elaine. If I would have been more understanding, I would have had her go into assisted living early. It's one of the most difficult decisions I think I've ever made in my life. Taking her to assisted living was one of the most difficult things I've ever done. But in retrospect, for those of us who have children and took our 4-year-old or 5-year-old daughter to kindergarten for the first time, it tears your heart out. You know, it's a change in life. But by gosh, I'm so fortunate that I did that because I'm a better father. Elaine is happier where she is. And when I talk about the work that Marion does, and those of you that are involved in anything with the Lutheran home or any other a place of assisted living, when I leave the Lutheran home after spending time with Elaine and realize and see how small her world is getting, I have nothing to really look forward to with her other than the clear understanding that she is in the best place possible, that she's safe, that she is secure, and basically has her needs attended to. And that is one of the most comforting things that I could ever hope for. And if you delay that transfer of living to another place, I think there's so much that the family and caregiver misses out on in comfort and realization of the fact they're getting the best care possible. I hope that helps. Okay. Yes?
When you did bring her to the Lutheran home, what was her response? How did she say, "Oh, no, 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 I don't want to leave," or you didn't mention it to her and surprise her? Or?
Yeah. Well, what was going on, she was going to the daycare. And not only was she going to daycare, but the only way really she would go to daycare was because she's continuing her college education, and so she would dutifully take a spiral notebook and a pen. And I took her there, and I worked very carefully and closely with the staff, who works carefully and closely with everybody. And they say it's sort of good if I don't drop by for a couple of days, maybe a week or so, just for Elaine to get acclimated. And we sort of concluded that you don't want to wait really too long, because it's going to be harder for them to make the mental adjustment. Their mind should remain flexible. So her reaction was, she wasn't very happy about it, and I didn't like the fact that I was making her life miserable, but it finally dawned on me, yeah, she's going to have to go through this difficult phase, because in the long run it's going to be better. Yes?
How has your relationship with God changed through all of these experiences?
How has my relationship with God changed? I don't think it has. When we were talking before, Senator Berger, I think, and Darla and so forth, life is death. Life is Alzheimer's. Life is cancer. Life is joy. Life is trips. Life is church. And so I look at this as a journey, and I'm making the journey with God, and if it's Alzheimer's, it's Alzheimer's. If it's being with good people here, it's being with good people here. And so certainly there is no negative. I'm not angry. I understand, and sometimes I begin having a pity party, and then I say, well, I think I've been really blessed. Really blessed. I want just a pity party, just a quick. So last summer I went to a German Fest, and I'm there by myself. We used to go to German Fest a lot, and I'm listening to this German band, and I'm thinking all of the things we used to do together, and now I'm feeling down in the dumps. So I go home, and I turn on TV. First I pour myself a martini, and then I turn on public broadcast, and here they have a fundraiser. And if you order $24.95, they'll send you songs from the 50s. And so I get on their song, okay, well, what else do I get? Well, if you pay $75, you're going to get songs from the 60s. Okay, I'll take that. Well, what else do I get? Well, if you play songs from whatever Frank Sinatra, that's going to be $500. Okay, I'll take that. So finally, she says, Mr. Schreiber, thank you for your contribution of $1,250. And so I don't think God had anything to do with that. I think he said, hey pal, you're off on your own, and that's really stupid. But I got a stack of CDs so high you can't, there are more CDs in my home than there are people in this room. There wouldn't be any room. Anything further? There's a, yes, Don.
Marty, I just want to thank you, because you sent me the book, it was been about 2 years after Tom passed away. And what I found is how many comparisons, the path you were going was very similar to the path I went on with Tom's cancer and death. And I read it, and it brought back a lot of memories, it brought back a lot of pains, it brought back a lot of regret that I didn't learn things soon enough. But I'm so appreciative that you put it in your book, because it's not good just for Alzheimer's patients, for Alzheimer's caregivers, but any caregiver should read that.
Well, thank you. Thank you. Yes?
Well, my dad only lived 3 years with Alzheimer's, so my mother took care of him at home. And after a year, we saw she needed help, so we got her help all evening, all night, so she could get sleep, and someone to help get him dressed in the morning. And one time, she and the caregiver were taking him out of the bedroom, and as they're walking out, they see their faces in the mirror. And to my mother's peevishness, the gal helper said to my dad, "Who's that man in the mirror there?" And he said, "The same man who was there yesterday." And I thought that was a good answer.
Yes.
And I would sit on the arm of my dad's chair. I'd probably go over every afternoon to help. And I'd have my arm around him, and he'd say, "Lori, I'm sorry, I'm sorry." I'd say, "Dad, you can't help it. You're sick." So that was it.
Yeah, well, thank you for that. So, well, I tell you, I couldn't ask for much finer people. I have the books here if anybody wants. I've got a bunch of $5 bills if you have 20, and again, whatever profit goes to Alzheimer's support group. But you've been terrific.
Marty, one last thing.
Yes.
You have a great script writer.
A great script writer. Well, thank you very much. Yeah, thank you.